The question is, what are the main topics in the chapters that we haven't had quizzes over yet? Let me repeat that one more time because I think it just now started. All right, for everybody watching the video, our first topic for this Hebrew review session is to look at the chapters we haven't had quizzes over yet and to look and see what are the main topics that could be on the test. So it's a good question. Thanks to Ignacio. So let's take a look at that. That's obviously 12 and 13. You see, that's also last week. Okay, so that's the adjective, the imperfect, and the construct. So the three topics we haven't had on quizzes yet are the adjective, the imperfect paradigm, and the construct. And all of these are fair game for the exam. Those are the big topics. And we could have had a quiz on Tuesday, but I decided it would be nicer for students not to have a quiz and then an exam. So the drawback to that is you haven't been quizzed over this stuff yet, but the positive is you have more time and you can just be focusing on the midterm. So let's go back to the adjective chapter, and we'll so we can just walk through these chapters here, 4 chapters, I believe, really 3 topics, because 12 and 13 are the same topic, the construct state. And first I'll just overview, here are the important points, and then we'll actually review those things. Does that you want to do that, or? Well, maybe just let me overview them, and we'll see if there's a topic in there that you actually want to spend time on right now. So, under the adjective, you need to know the 3 uses of the adjective in Hebrew, which are the same 3 uses of the adjective that we have in English. So, who can name one of the uses of the adjective?
There's predicative, there's attributive, and there's substantive.
Okay, you did better than 1. You did 3. Okay, that's okay. That's fine. That's good. So the 3 uses of the adjective are attributive. I like to start with the attributive because it's kind of closest to the main function of the adjective. The attributive, which conveys an attribute of a noun. The predicative, which is, it actually functions as a predicate in the sentence. It's making a statement to describe the subject of the sentence. And then substantive, or substantival. And substantive means that the adjective stands in the place of the noun. All right? So knowing those 3 and the features of each of those 3 that's the main subject or matter of this chapter. So that's something you should know. So let's overview and we'll come back, and maybe that's something you want to talk about and review the details of that. The imperfect, the main thing is the imperfect paradigm. Yiktol, tiktol, tiktol, tikteli, ektol, yiktul, tiktona, tiktul, tiktona, niktol. I'm not going to have you parse any verbs on this exam, but knowing that paradigm, which was on the, or we didn't have that on the quiz yet, have we?
No.
We haven't had that on the quiz. Yeah, I would say you should work on that paradigm. What's a major feature that distinguishes the imperfect paradigm from the perfect paradigm? Gregory?
It has prefixes.
It has prefixes. So if a verb form has a prefix, you know it's imperfect and not perfect. So I would say, yeah, doing your best. First of all, if you can only get the prefixes and suffixes down, get that down, even if you can't do the vowels. I don't think that if you're not getting the vowels yet, that I would prioritize other subjects to review rather than that, but this is a paradigm that we have to know. In fact, I'll probably put it on the next quiz because it's so important. We have to get this. But knowing the basic features of the imperfect paradigm, that it has prefixes and what those prefixes are, that's all there is for chapter 11, is that paradigm. That's the main thing. For construct, it's really pretty simple. It's that paradigm I put up here on the board. You can use this paradigm I put. Remember this? We have our regular noun. Paradigm. Sus, susa, susim, suso. Okay, so you should already be able to just say that. Sus, susa, susim, suso. Sus, susa, susim, suso. Just be able to say that, right? You should have that. So those are our basic noun endings. That's going to be on the test. This I'm gonna put the weight on nouns in this test. So it's gonna be a little bit of verbs, but that's where the weight's gonna be in this first half of the course. So the construct paradigm. Remember, it's only different in these two forms. Sus, susat. Sus a, suso. Okay? Sus, susat, suse, suso. Sus, susat, suse, suso. Let's say it together. Sus.
Sus.
Okay, repeat after me first. Sus.
Sus.
Susat.
Susat.
Suse.
Suse.
Suso. Okay, together. 1, 2, 3. Sus. Susat. Suse. Suso. Okay, so only two modifications to the paradigm we already know for them now. That's the main thing for these two chapters, is knowing that. And then, of course, we know that it has to be joined closely to a following noun. That is what creates the construct relationship. And sometimes you can have vowel changes that go along with it, but not in the case of sus, because it is a stable long vowel. So that's an overview of these chapters. So adjective, the three uses of the adjective. Imperfect paradigm. This construct paradigm and the use of the construct. Now, if you want to, we can go into one of these. I mean, these are the freshest subjects for us. Maybe there's a subject that was older that we want to go back to, but we could go into the details and review all the details of one of these topics if you want. Is there one of those you want to go through? The dual ending. Yeah, you should know that.
Or something like that?
I. Yeah. So remember, let's do sus masculine and plural. Susim. But the dual, if I wanted to say two horses, notice that the consonants are the same, yod mem, but the vowel pattern and the accent pattern are different. Okay, the accent is here rather than here. Papa chirik. Okay, that's the dual. This is horses, and this is two horses. Susim, horses. Susayim, two horses. So you should certainly know the dual ending. And if that's helpful to you, thinking of the masculine plural, same consonants, but two different vowels, and the accent is on the pre-tonic. Well, actually, no, that's not, that's the tonic syllable, but it's not on the last syllable, let's put it that way, okay? That's the tonic syllable, which is not the last syllable of the word. Okay, but how about these topics? Adjective, imperfect, construct. Is there anything in there you want to go into more detail, Ian?
I'm just thinking about rules for the construct.
Uh-huh.
One I can really remember is it taking its definiteness from the final word in the construct.
That's right.
Is there another rule? I'm trying to.
Okay, so the construct state has these endings, and it's closely joined to a following noun. So it's about nouns juxtaposed with each other. And it can be two nouns or a whole string of nouns that are closely joined. And nothing can come in between those nouns. Nothing can break into there. Preposition can't, another word can't. And the whole chain in English, we would translate it with the default translation, X of Y, or X of Y of Z. I mean, you keep going. It's of between each of them. The whole chain is indefinite, or the whole chain is definite. It can't be mixed. And the definiteness is determined by the definiteness of the last word in the chain. Okay, so let's say the mayor susat melech. Susat melech. How would we translate this? We have two nouns joined together. We recognize the construct ending of the feminine singular. Susat melech. How would we translate it? Gregory?
A king's horse.
Good. Or you're right about that. What's the intermediate stage before we get to that translation? Let's use of. I think for the sake of
the horse of a king.
Yeah, a horse of a king.
Okay.
So just to be hyper literal to make sure we get it before you were correct and you made it into a nicely sounding English phrase. But so we look at this is how you do it. You look at the last word. Once you've identified a construct chain, look at the last word. Is it definite or indefinite? Indefinite. So the whole thing is indefinite. So it's a horse of a king. And that we want to make sure to do that to make sure we're understanding it correctly. Then you could say a king's horse. Right? So, we use apostrophe S because we recognize it's a possessive use, and we omitted one of the indefinite articles to make it smoother. So that was all correct. But just to make sure we get it, give it a literal translation first. A king of a horse. All right? So if we want to make it definite, we could add the definite article. Susata melech. That would be the horse of the king. The whole thing is definite now because I added that definite article. So Ian. So I'm just going back over that. You asked about the definiteness of the whole thing based on the last. Now, we're gonna learn later that there's more than one way to make a noun definite. So the main way is with the definite article. We do know that a name, a proper noun, a name, is definite, right? So Yaakov, Jacob,
Right.
is, the fact that it's a proper noun is by definition definite. It's a specific individual. So if I had Susat Yaakov, there's no definite article, but the last item in that chain is definite because it's a proper noun. So it would make the whole thing definite. And we're going to learn later there are possessive pronoun suffixes, so that's another way. You don't have to have an article, that suffix is going to make it. But the principle remains the same, that the definiteness of the entire chain is determined by the last member of the chain in the construct state. Gregory?
Question, if you were to say, for example, old, tall, white horse, the king, would it be an old, you could mix adjectives and nouns like that?
Well, an adjective can't be, unless the adjective was substantival, it wouldn't be standing in a construct chain, because remember, substantival is when the adjective has a noun function. So if you had it in the chain, it would have to be substantival. Only nouns can participate in the construct relationship. And if it's an attributive adjective, it must follow the whole chain. Now we connect into the adjective rules. If it's a predicative adjective, it can precede, right? But nothing can break into the chain in the middle. So yeah, if we wanted to say, this is a good example. So we have a feminine singular item and a masculine singular. So if we want to use the adjective, and it's all definite. It's all definite. So if I said, Susat HaMelech HaTov, it's the mayor of the king, the good. What does good refer to in this phrase?
To the king.
It must refer to the king and not the horse because it's masculine. But if I did this, so that would be the horse of a good king. If I said HaTova, now it must refer to what? The horse or the mare, the mare. So it can't refer to the king because it's feminine. So this is where our agreement rules come in. Okay? But if I was going to make this predicative, it would have to refer to the mare, because that's the main item in the chain. And it would have to be tova without the definite article, and I probably would put it over here. I would say tova susat hamelech. And that would be the mare of the king is good. Right? That's predicate adjective. Okay? So anything else in these topics that we want to go into?
So what do you think we should be able to identify in terms of the uses? Is it the uses? Not the uses. What do we call them? The uses of
The uses of the adjective.
the
Yeah, I mean, one way is to recognize it like this. If you're looking at some Hebrew, you recognize the use. Another would be to know. I'm not going to ask you, except for in paradigms, I'm not going to ask you to produce Hebrew. So, you're better off thinking about this an example. But so we could think about it deductively. Okay, attributive adjective. Attributive adjective. Attributive adjective in Hebrew must follow the noun it modifies and agree in gender, number, and definiteness. So I know that, knowing that means I know that use, the first use of the adjective. But I could also then look at it inductively, look at this example and say, oh, I have an adjective following and agreeing in gender, number, and definiteness. This is an attributive use, so to be able to recognize this as an attributive use would be good too, right? So in this case, it's an adjective referring back to this mayor because it can't refer to the king because there's a disagreement in gender. But that's how it has to be because it can't break in. Normally it would be after it, but it can't break into the middle of a construct chain. Gregory?
If you were to say the horse and camel of the king, but you can't have an and come in the chain, right?
Right.
So you just say horse, camel, homiletic, and you just understand it would be and.
No, you would have to use a different construction. You could say horse. You could say horse of the king, and camel of the king. That's fine in Hebrew. That's redundant in English, but it's not. You could do. You talked
about having several nouns there, and nothing to break the chain. I'm just wondering how what else could you add on there to in that sentence?
Any nouns that make sense in the context here. Any nouns can be in a construct chain. But only nouns. Or it could be an adjective functioning like a noun. But you can't break it up with conjunctions. You can't break it up with prepositions. You can't break it up with. You can't have articles except on the last word. So yeah, you have different options. You could do two different construct phrases, join with a conjunction. You can do that. Or you could just use a different construction, like using the lamed preposition for prepossession. So you would say, a horse, the camel, la melech, belonging to the king. You could do that, but you can't. You couldn't break up the construct with a conjunction. So attributive adjective, it must follow the noun it modifies and agree in gender, number, and definiteness. In the case of a construct, it must follow the construct, but it's still following. So predicative adjective, it usually precedes and it agrees in gender and number, but it's never definite. That's the second use. In this case, I talked about it, but it has to be tovah here. Because it has to refer to this. Yeah, you wouldn't, in this context, you wouldn't be talking about the goodness of the king, right? Because the first word in the construct chain is the word that interacts with the sentence. So, Tovah Susat HaMelech, it agrees in gender and number, feminine singular. Doesn't agree in definiteness. This is definite. This one can't be to be predicative. So this is the mayor of the king is good. It's a complete sentence. That's the difference between attributive and predicative. Attributive is a noun phrase, it's not a sentence. Once you have a predicate, you have a sentence. So this can be a whole sentence. The mayor of the king is good.
Dr. Bott?
Yeah.
That third rule with the predicate, it's not that that the predicate does not need to agree with the noun that it precedes indefiniteness. It doesn't need to do that. It's that it can't be definite.
It can't be definite.
It can't. Okay.
It can never be definite.
Okay. I wrote that down wrong.
Yeah. It can't be, to be a predicative adjective, it can't be definite. It must be indefinite.
Okay.
And it usually precedes the noun that's the subject of the sentence. But remember, because in Hebrew sentences like this, we have to supply the verb to be in English, because it's a complete sentence in Hebrew. It doesn't have to have the verb to be. So going back to Gregory's point, if we come to the third use, which is the attributive use of the adjective, let's use the same adjective and we'll put it into a construct phrase, okay? Let's see. Susat tov hamelech. All right, now I put an adjective in there, good, but it can't be functioning as an adjective because it's in a construct chain, it must be functioning as a noun. So it's definite. So the mayor of the good one of the king. So perhaps in the context I'm talking about the good servant of the king. Okay, in the context. But I have to take this tov as a noun, I can't take it as an adjective. But an adjective can work that way in the substantive use. So here's a case where this would be considered a substantival use of the adjective. But it not as, I mean, it doesn't agree, it doesn't, if you look at the whole, it can't be another type of an adjective. It has, it's within a construct chain. That's a noun job. Any time an adjective does a noun job, it's a substantival adjective. It's standing in for noun. The good man, or the good woman, or the good one, the good servant. So, I mean, those are the things we need to know about, and with some examples about these three uses of the adjective. Ian?
Is that a typical position for the substantival adjective, is to stand in between? Or
Could be in any position. I just, for the sake of sense,
Yeah, no, I got you.
it wouldn't make, I was going to put it at the end, I thought that doesn't make sense. The mayor of the king of the good.
Mm-hmm.
But if I thought of it as so that's going on in my mind. It's just, it's only the meanings that would dictate where it should be placed.
Okay.
It's not grammatically limited
Okay.
to where it could be. I just tried to make it so it would make some sense. Place it in the middle.
Because I'm just thinking about if it precedes the construct noun there, how would I be able to tell that it's
Well, you
substantival?
wouldn't since it's stable because it has a whole and bob. You wouldn't from the vowel, but just the fact that you have this sequence. Yeah, could be some ambiguity. It could be. Well, no, not if it's masculine. If it was feminine, like the good woman, it could be ambiguous because then you might think it was predicative. But if it's masculine, it wouldn't be because it's not agreeing yet with this word, so
Okay.
it would have to be. Yeah, but if it wasn't stable and unchanging in its vowels, the vowels would change, and that would also be an indicator.
Okay.
All right. So again, we're combining. We're doing a grammatical mashup. We're combining construct discussion with adjective discussion. So hopefully that's clarified. So, all right, who can give me the features of the attributive use of the adjective? Attributive use of the adjective in Hebrew. Gregory?
It has to follow and has to agree.
Okay. Tell me what it agrees in, though, because there's a difference with the predicative. So you have to
Number and gender.
and one more.
Definiteness.
Definiteness. Three things. So, and to be most complete, I'm sure you meant this, but it follows the noun it modifies. That's what an adjective is doing. It modifies a noun. So, follows the noun it modifies, and it agrees with that noun in gender, number, and definiteness. Good. Good. You got most of it. There, spelled out most of it. Okay. So that's the attributive use of the adjective. How about the predicative adjective? Ian, you want to give it to us? Yeah.
It precedes the noun that it modifies.
Usually.
And it agrees in number and gender, but it is never definite.
But not definite. Yeah. Yeah, because, yeah, I suppose if the subject was indefinite, then it would happen to agree in being indefinite, but it's not. It's just happenstance. It's not actually necessary. It can never be definite in predicative use. All right. Who can give me this is the simplest one. Who can give me the substantival use? What it is? Yeah.
Isn't its use as a noun?
Yep. Does a noun job. So what are some jobs of nouns in a sentence?
As like a subject?
Yeah. Subject of a verb. You think of other noun jobs? The object of a verb could be direct object, indirect object. Here we have one right here, a noun job, functioning in a construct chain. Okay, so any job that a noun does, if an adjective is doing it, it's standing in the place of a noun. It has substance like a noun, substantive.
So forgive me if I missed this, but I thought you said several times you could never break a chain. You had that the attributive chain going on there with a noun, nothing could break it. But now you've got a substantive adjective breaking it.
No, it doesn't break it. Because it's a noun. It's functioning like a noun.
Yeah.
So it functions in this phrase as a noun. So it's not, what I mean is something coming in between the nouns in the chain. Like a preposition, independent or inseparable. Yeah, so because the fact that this adjective is for all intents and purposes, a noun.
Okay.
In the sentence, it's a good man, okay, the good servant of the king. So, but it's not. If it was functioning as an adjective, it would break it. If I was trying to, but it wouldn't look like this if it were. But it would. But because an adjective can act like a noun, it can serve in a construct chain. But all the other things we're learning that you can add on, like inseparable prepositions or or other types of words that could come in between, you can't do that and preserve the construct chain. Ignacio?
So it could serve as a subject, direct, and indirect object.
Subject, direct, and indirect object. Yeah, those are common places where you find nouns in a sentence. Or in a construct chain. Right? That's something only a noun can do. So you're talking about the substantival adjective.
Right.
All right. So let's go back farther. Let's think if there's some subjects earlier in the term that we haven't looked at for a while that we want to go back to. What's the standard Hebrew word order? Yeah?
Verb, subject, direct object, indirect object.
Right. That's the default order. And it's different from English word order because we always have our subjects first, then our verbs, but then it follows the same order. Direct object, indirect object, usually. But in Hebrew, you can actually alter that order. So what does it tell us when the order is altered? Unlike English, where we're tied to our order, we really cling to the order. What does it tell us in Hebrew if the order is out of this default order?
It could be emphatic.
Emphatic. So
it could be a negation.
Well, you can have a negation in standard word order.
Okay.
Yeah, you could just put low before the low verb, subject, direct object, indirect object.
Okay.
So anything that you want to emphasize in the sentence can move to the front and take the place of the verb. And whenever you do that's emphatic. It's emphasizing that element in the sentence. And you can take any element in Hebrew. Yeah. Just about any element. Of the main elements you can. subject can move forward on direct object, indirect object to become emphatic. And you might be thinking that if you want to negate something in particular, that's the other thing, that you can negate particular elements in the sentence. The standard is lo plus the verb, just saying that negating the verb, but you can negate other parts, in which case then you get that emphatic construction where that piece moves forward. It's always lo first, then that, whatever it is, subject or direct object, indirect object is moving forward. There are ways to emphasize the verb we haven't learned yet. So you can emphasize the verb in the sentence too. Okay, we touched on noun endings. We have the independent personal pronouns. Hu, he, ata, at, ani. Hema, hemna, atem, atain, anachnu. Those are the pronouns that are used when they're the subject of the sentence. They aren't used for the objects of verbs, only for subjects.
What page are those on the page?
24, and we learn them in the vocabulary list of chapter 4, but then in chapter 5 we get the paradigm for them. And we learn about the definite article, which is normally ha, he, patach, strong dagesh in the first consonant of the word. Except in what case? Where is there a change or disruption in the typical pattern of the definite article? With the guttural, yeah, because one of the things we know about gutturals is that they reject the strong dagesh. Well, they're not big kafat letters, so they can't take the weak dagesh, and all the other letters can take a strong dagesh, except for the gutturals. They reject it. And two different things could happen. You get compensatory lengthening, in which the preceding vowel lengthens, or no vowel lengthening. You just treat it as if it's doubled, even though it's not. The vowel just stays the same. The resh is a guttural wannabe, so sometimes it acts like the gutturals. Ignacio?
I have a question regarding that. When we added to the word sus here, how do we go about that? Does it change the vowel?
Nope.
It doesn't.
Yeah, adding the article, it doesn't change anything. Sus is regular. That's why we like to use it for paradigms. So, and the article won't change the vowels. It's usually adding suffixes that'll change the vowels of the noun. Why? Because the accent shifts. Remember, because in Hebrew the accent goes to the last syllable. So if you add a suffix to it, the accent shifts, and that changes. Some vowels can then shift, except for the long ones, the super long ones. So yeah, sus is just your typical. So sus is horse, hasus is the horse. So you add three things. Hey, paitach, strong dagesh. Right? And then hey, patach, I try to add the dagesh, the strong dagesh, and it rejects it, and then it lengthens and moves up in the vowel chart to a longer vowel in the same type. The comments. So this long vowel is a result of the strong dagesh, or being rejected by the guttural. Or in some cases, like chetz, arrow, it's just ha. Ha chetz. Ooh, gotta get my vowel in here. This is called compensatory lengthening. This is called virtual doubling, where it's as if it's doubled, but it's not. So we learn to hold on to the consonants much more strongly, right? So if we see a hey at the beginning, the first thing we would think is definite article. And we're not as worried, okay, there's some vowel changes here. Not here, actually, but, some vowel changes. You could also have a seggle in certain cases, right? Not very common, but like har, mountain. It's heha, like that. So there can be some vowel changes, but we know reasons why that happens. It's the gutturals that are causing vowel changes here. Even if we can't produce them ourselves, we know the reason why when you see it in Hebrew. But the hey is going to be there to mark the definiteness of the noun. Okay, now if we're adding the preposition, inseparable preposition to this word, if I wanted to just say to the horse, how would I do it? I'm going to add l to it. How would I do it? To the horse. Yeah, Berger?
The lamed is going to replace the hay, but the vowel under the hay is going to stay.
Exactly right. The vowel under the hay is going to stay. I like how it rhymes too. It's exactly right. It's gonna slide over the hay. This is going to be sliding over here. So it's lasus. To, and then I see this patach strong dogish, I know it's definite. To the horse. And the same thing on all these. La'av, the lamed just slides over the hay. So the vowel is determined by the article situation. The preposition slides over the hay, whatever the vowel is. La chetz le har. Okay, then we have the conjunction vav, which resembles these inseparable prepositions in that it's one letter that's attached to a word with the vocal schwa, v, like b, k, l. And it follows some of the same patterns. It doesn't slide over the definite article. It just goes on the front. So it's not like the definite article in that sense. So we can have v'ha'av. Oops, I forgot my comments here. V'ha'av. That means and the father. So you see how you can have actually multiple elements attached to the front. And actually, eventually we'll see multiple elements attached to the end of the word in Hebrew too, but we won't worry about that yet. So it looks like the inseparable prepositions, but it never slides over the definite article. So it's va with a vocal schwa because it's at the beginning of a syllable, at the beginning of a word. Except in the case of what letters or sounds? Yeah. Or as I like to say, the bump schwa. In Canaan, this is a very popular dance. The bump schwa, but whenever they dance it, they always say ooh, 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 bump schwa. So it's a sure. So let's say beged, garment. Beged. What type of a noun is that? Segolate noun. Two segles with an accent on the first syllable. Okay. So I'm going to add it here, but it's a bait. Bait mem pei, or any letter, any consonant with the schwa. So I have to say oo. Oo beged. Well, actually, I should say oo veged now, because this weak dogish is preceded by a vowel, so I'm going to get rid of that. Oo beged. Okay? But if it's like, let's say, devarim, words. Okay? it's beginning with a schwa, so it's not a bump, it's not a bait mem pay, but it does begin with a schwa. That's why you have to remember it's bump schwa. Bump schwa. It's still gonna be oo, and I'm gonna lose this weak dagesh. Udvarim. Okay, the exception to the rule that syllables never begin with vowels in Hebrew. This is the only exception to that. Gregory?
So the rules for the lamed, are those the same rules for the D, the B and the C when they the width and the like and whatever it is?
Bait, kaf, lamed. Yeah, those are there are three inseparable prepositions.
Right, and the rules are the same for how how they.
Yep, they're all the same. They all three of those operate the same. So, what is the preposition that's a double agent? It is both able to stand on its own and attach to the front of a word. There's only one preposition that can do that.
Main,
Yeah, or mean.
mean,
Yeah. Mem, chirik, nun. Mean. It can stand on its own, mean, or it can be attached. And the nun assimilates, and so you get a strong dagesh in the first root letter. Sort of like adding the article. It's really what it's doing. It's doubling the first root letter because the strong dagesh is the doubling dagesh. Okay, any other topics that you're feeling not as certain about or not as strong on? Sam, what's something you want to go over?
I'm looking at it now. In the last class, you guys went over the construct relationship.
Yeah.
I guess I would appreciate going over that again.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of what we were talking about is the construct, but the construct relationship. Well, let's go back a little bit. So there are two states of nouns in Hebrew: the absolute state and the construct state. Okay. The absolute state is basically the state that we've been learning up until now. It's the standalone state. It's absolute, stands on its own. It's the form of the noun that we find in the vocabulary lists and the dictionary. But because Hebrew has very few adjectives, unlike English, one of the results of that is that they are able to make more complex statements about nouns by juxtaposing these nouns with each other. By just jamming them together. That's called the construct state. And so this paradigm right here is the construct state of the noun. It's very similar to the absolute state of the noun, those noun endings we learned. Sus, susa, susim, susot. But has two variations, one in the feminine singular, one in the masculine plural. The construct form is susat. So remember back to where we were talking about this earlier. This is the construct right here, or suse for the masculine plural. And then you it's the last word or the second word is going to be it's in an absolute form, but it's forming a construct relationship or construct chain of these two nouns. So in this example, these examples we had over here were construct chains. So if I wanted to say mares of the king, I would say susot. Right, going over to my paradigm over here. Susot HaMelech. So it looks, in this case, it looks just like the feminine plural noun, but because it's joined with another noun that follows it, this is a construct relationship. And we translate that into English by the word of.
The horse of the king.
Right, the horse, we just always use as a default. Now, we learned that there are different functions of the genitive, like in Greek. Okay, this is a genitive, the construct in Hebrew is conveying a genitive relationship. So possession is one, like in this case. It could be attributive. There are others, but those are the two main ones. So it could, like Har HaKodesh, the mountain of the holiness. So it's not, the mountain isn't possessed by holiness. Holiness is describing it like an adjective, but it's a noun. So you can translate that to holy mountain. So the definiteness of the entire phrase or chain, because I could add more words before this word, is determined by the last word. And it's all or nothing. It's either all definite or it's all indefinite. Can never be mixed. As a construct chain, you could have it mixed, and this is something we talked about in class the other day. You just have to use a different construction. You could use the lamed preposition to, belonging to in Hebrew. That's commonly used for possession. So one could be definite, one could be indefinite. But it's just not a construct chain anymore. So you join these nouns together, and the last word, these can't be definite. Any words that precede this can't be definite. They can't have a definite article. Only the last one can. And that's the one. It could also be indefinite. So if I said Susot Melech, that would be mares of a king. Susot Melech, but Susot HaMelech means the mares of the king. All definite. And nothing can break in here. You can't put an adjective in here, a preposition. You can't put any phrases or anything in here. It has to go on this side or on this side of it. Because this is the construct relationship. Now, in some nouns, you'll have vowel changes in here, and they follow the same vowel changes that we learned in the vowel change chapter for syllables that are distant from the accent. Because now, this is an accentual unit, this whole phrase or whole chain. It's as if the accent comes over here to this one. So because Shuruk is stable, we don't have any vowel changes in this case, but we would, for example, I think this is the example I used last time. Words is words plural, masculine plural, devarim. This is devarim. But if I attach this, I have to use this form to make it a construct. I have to use the masculine plural of the construct. Okay, now this is no longer accented. The accent is over here. So this is stable because it's a long vowel with the yod here. This is going to reduce because it's propretonic, and then this now that is going to be a chiric, a short vowel to fill this in. So the construct of this is divrei hamelech. Divrei hamelech. So we have vowel changes here. So this is just to illustrate that in certain nouns you'll have vowel changes. I like to use sus because there are no changes, so it's easy to use. But there are, you need to know there, and that's also a feature of the construct. So this is the words of the king. The words of the king. Okay. Who can explain the fact what it means to say that Hebrew is aspectual rather than tense oriented. Give it a try.
The two kinds of verbs, those representing an action, an action, and
Yeah.
this is the effects of a completed action.
Okay, an action. By an action, you mean? Can you say more about that one?
Can be present. It's can be present. Can be future. The point is, it is something that is happening.
Okay, something that's an ongoing action, an income. Yeah. So, either one of the two major aspects can be placed in time, past, present, and future. So it's not a feature of one or the other. So what are the So there's first of all there's a verb pattern, which is call. We're learning the simple form of the verb. That's the verb that we're going to focus on until we get to the end of the term. Then I'm going to give you an overview of other verb patterns. And those patterns can be understood fairly easily as modifications of this pattern. That's why we want to spend time getting this one down. And it has two major conjugations that we've learned so far, which convey these two different aspects. So what are they and how do they? Perfect and imperfect. So what aspect does perfect convey? A completed action, right. And which aspect does imperfect convey? Okay, incomplete action. So you remember I used the example of a picture frame, right? Because tense is the time of the action. Aspect is the type of the action. So Hebrew is interested in the type of action, how to characterize this action rather than where it's placed in time. They place it in time with other contextual clues in how it's used, but not within the verb itself. So think about a picture frame, right? Because it pictures the action. That's what we're doing with aspect. We're picturing the action. If I have this action with a beginning, a middle, and an end within the frame, what type of aspect is that? Okay, I see what you're saying there. That's the verb form. The aspect is completed action. But you're right. It's the perfect verb that would convey this. Perfect verb, complete action. Okay? That's our paradigm. Katal, katala, katalpa, katalpi, right? Perfect paradigm. So if I had my frame again, and I have an action that begins outside the frame and it ends outside the frame, I'm just looking at it and it's ongoing, then what verb and what aspect is this? Imperfect with what kind of aspect?
Incomplete.
What did you
I said complete.
complete? You mean, but it's not, this is the complete one. So what's the other one?
Oh, incomplete?
Yeah. Imperfect. Yeah, it's easy to get these confused, but actually the name can help you out. If it's an imperfect verb, it's an incomplete action. Not perfect, not complete. Perfect, complete. So it's incomplete or not complete action. That's how it's pictured. It's pictured that way. It could be complete in time. It's in the past, it's already happened, but you're picturing it with the verb in this way. So remember I used the example of it's like you're in a helicopter and looking down, you can see the beginning, the middle, and the end of the parade. That's complete. You look at the whole thing. Or if you're sitting in your lawn chair out in your yard and watching the parade go by, you don't see where it begins or where it ends. It's ongoing. And both are possible ways to picture the same event going, at the same time. So now, this one will tend to be used for past tense actions, but not exclusively so. And that's why the default translation for us, because we have to put it into time, because our verbal system is time-based. We have to put it into time. Shamar, the verb, we would say he guarded, put it in the past, just to give it a translation. And the imperfect will tend to be used to express actions in the present and the future, right? Because that's how we tend to experience those actions in the present and the future as ongoing. And so our default translation to give a maximal differentiation is to use the future translation for yishmor, he will guard. Just as a default, we have to have it in tense, in time, in English. So those are the perfect and imperfect are the two conjugations that we've learned so far. There are a few more that we're going to learn. We're going to learn the imperative, which is a conjugation for giving commands. And we'll learn the participle. Okay, there are a few more conjugations, but these are the biggest paradigms to learn, the perfect and the imperfect. And they illustrate clearly the aspectual nature of the Hebrew verbal system. Okay, what other topics do we want to hit on while we talk? I'm happy to go, if you have topics you want to talk about, I'm happy to go till the lunch bell. Gregory?
So if nobody else cares about this, I can pass on it, but I would actually love to run through the endings and prefixes and suffixes for especially for perfect. I took the test again and didn't get them all right, and thought I did. And then just you did perfect and running through those just because it's probably another question in my head.
Okay, sure. That's fine with me. So yeah, this is the good place to do it. We're talking about verbs, so. Normally I would have people coming up to the board and have you guys doing it, but I think we're probably supposed to just not do that, so. Supposed to minimize touching things, so I'll do it. Let's put the perfect on this side and put the imperfect over here on this side. Okay, so we have singular and plural. And then we have, in Hebrew, we start the paradigm with the third person masculine and feminine, second person masculine and feminine, and then remember that the first person is common. It can be either masculine or feminine. So that's nice. We get out of two forms. Okay? So we have, so I'm going to put this root. This is supposed to be second person. Okay? Katal, kamas pata. Katila. That's the feminine. Okay? Katalta. Katalt. Katalti. Okay, so those are the singular ones in the perfect. Katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti. Katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti. Okay, so let me put a line on here to get this in persons. Okay, so this is the perfect is known as the suffix conjugation because it only has suffixes, it doesn't have any prefixes. And remember, I pointed out to you that there should be an accent on this syllable for these three forms. Also, this is a vocal schwa right here. Katala. Not katla, but katila. Okay? Now, over here, there's a common form here. There's no there's not masculine and feminine, there's a common form, and it's katelu. Okay, another vocal schwa, katelu. That's common. So let's put common there by it. Masculine or feminine. Katal 10. Let me get my word up here. Katal 10. Katal 10. Katalnu. Okay, so in the plural category, katilu is the common form for third person. They killed, it could be masculine, it could be feminine. It's common. Katilu. Katalten, katalten, katalnu. Okay, so that's the paradigm for the perfect. So where were you having trouble?
I heard Katalta, but I put a hey at the end of it and didn't leave it as just a T.
On this one?
Yeah.
Okay, that's tricky because usually when we have a comments at the end of a word, it's going to be with a hey. But there's a rule in linguistics that is the more common, the more irregular. It seems counterintuitive. The more common, the more irregular. But the reason why is because if people use it all the time, they don't mind it being irregular because everybody has it memorized because they use it all the time. The less common, the more irregular. Because if you don't hear it very often, it has to follow rules so you know how to use it. So this is in these paradigms, you're gonna be irregularities, and that's why you just have to learn the paradigm as such, as that paradigm is. So like having these vocal schwas here, that's weird to have that here. Katila, katilu. And having a comments here at the end with no hey, that's kind of weird. Yeah, so that's good if you said you heard it, in your mind you heard it.
Well, I had it memorized, so I
Katalta.
Katalti, Katalta, Ta, Katalt,
Katal.
Right.
Yeah. But this is weird to have two silent schwas in a row. It's very strange. You just have to, that's just that form. There's not a rule for
Usually
that.
if you have the ah or something, you oftentimes will have a
You're right.
silent comment.
That's actually good because you're tying that into patterns you've seen. That's a good thing. It just happens to be not how this paradigm goes. So it's good. I wouldn't worry too much about that. But now, and also actually missing something is really helpful for learning it, right? If you look at it and you say, man, I missed that, it cements that in your mind in a way that just saying, oh, I think I got it, and not testing it won't. So that's going to help you not to put a hey on the end there, I think. So, yeah, that's the perfect. So any questions about the paradigm? Let's say it together. Repeat after me. Katal.
Katal.
Katila.
Katala.
Katalta.
Katalta.
Katalt.
Katalt.
Katalti.
Katalti.
Katelu.
Katalu.
Kataltem.
Kataltem.
Katalten.
Katalten.
Katalnu.
Katalum.
Now notice this is not kataltem, like we would expect over here. It's kataltem, accent on the last syllable. Katalten. Okay, but then this one has the accent like these three do here. Katalnu. In the first person. Okay? So it's all suffixes. These three are all tav. You can look at it like this to come up with patterns. These three are all tavs. And then these two have a similarity in the tem-ten ending. Right? Tem-ten. So Then remembering this third person plural has a common form, that's unique here. So depending on how it works for you to learn, looking at it like this and looking for patterns can be helpful. All right, so we do the imperfect. Maybe you guys can tell me the imperfect forms. First person masculine, feminine. Second person masculine, feminine. First person common. Okay, let's do the singular forms. I'll put all of our roots on here. Okay, so what's the third person masculine singular in the imperfect of kapal? Of kotetlamen? Yiktol, it's got the prefix. Yiktol. Okay? Now, already if you know this, you can apply this down to these forms, right? To help yourself. So what is the third person feminine singular? Tiktol. Very good. Tiktol. It's got the same column here. It's got the same closed syllable prefix with a chirik, but it has a tav now instead of the yod. Okay? How about the second person masculine singular? It is also tiktol. Okay? So a pattern we see here is that these two forms are the same. Okay? Second person feminine singular. Okay, close. Good job, close. It's tiktoli. There's a schwa there. Tiktoli. So we have two schwas together. The first one's silent, the second one's vocal. Tiktoli. First person common singular. What? Close. It's a segol instead of a chirik. Segol makes an eh sound. Ektol. Ektol. It's got an olive. Okay? So that segol is, as I said, probably a result of this olive. Olives tend to like segols more than chirics. So that's just, there is maybe a reason behind that, but it's also just part of the paradigm. So we have the same column, we have the same closed syllable prefix here, but instead of a chirik, we have a segol, which is in the same vowel class. So we're seeing patterns here, seeing similarities, okay? But there are these two forms that are the same here. Okay, let's put our root letters up here. Okay, what is the third person masculine plural of the imperfect? Correct, yiktalu. Okay, now here we see this shurik. Maybe we connect it to the perfect over here. Okay, that's a helpful, whatever connections you can make to help you to know a pattern. Okay, so maybe that's a helpful one to connect it in the third person over there. Okay, a yiktulu, two schwas together. The first one's silent, the second one's vocal. Yiktulu. Okay, how about third person feminine plural? It's a tav, yeah, it's a tav. The noon only comes in down here. Now, actually, it's interesting because look at over there. In the same slot here, you have a noon. Here it's the suffix. Here it's the prefix. Okay, so that's interesting. That would be a good connection we can make. But it's tiktolna. Accent on this syllable. Tiktolna. Okay. What is the second person masculine plural of the imperfect of kapal? Yes. Tiktulu. So it's like this one, except it has a tav instead of a yod. And actually, what we're seeing here is this yod looks like it's part of the third person masculine. See that yod here and yod here? And whereas we have tavs here on all these second person, on the feminine and the second persons here. Okay? Tiktulu. How about this one? What's that? Yep, Tiktolna. That was very, very close. Tiktolna. It's the same form, isn't it? Tiktolna. And then, Gregory, since you were using that noon earlier, what's this one? Niktol? It's Niktol. Yeah, it's got the noon. I got a little out of alignment here, but this is the first person. Niktol. It's got that noon. You get connected to the noon of the new here, but it's on the prefix here because it's the prefix conjugation. So on this side, we have two identical forms, both of them feminine. Okay, third person feminine plural and second person feminine plural are identical. They will kill, feminine, and you all will kill, feminine. So looking at this paradigm, we can notice some patterns where there are, these all have tavs, tav. These two have yods. We have these two identical forms and these two identical forms. So all of that can play into helping you, picture the whole paradigm. But for some, you might want to be using the songs, and maybe you get down like you were doing. I heard it. You said I heard it, and I wrote it. That's a good way to do it too. You just have to know, in cases where you could write it more than one way. If you're hearing it, what's the actual, spelling of it? So these are our two major conjugations we've learned so far. The perfect conjugation, which has only suffixes, and the imperfect, which has, every form has a prefix and some have suffixes. This one. Last thing, let's say this one together. Repeat after me. Yiktol. Tiktol. Tiktol. Tikteli. Ektol. Yiktolu. Tiktolna. Tiktolu. Tiktolna. Niktol. All right. Let's call it quits right there. Unless there's one quick, short one right now. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for coming today, spending this extra time.